How much do you trust the Waqf Board? Let's take that question. Do people trust the Waqf Board? And here, I'm interested in seeing what Muslims particularly think of whether they trust the Waqf Board. How much trust do you have in the Waqf Board as an institution? Remember, 13% of the Muslims say they have no trust at all, 12% say they have very little trust, 10% say they have some trust, 59%, which is 6 out of 10, say they have a lot of trust in the Waqf institution. Amongst the others, obviously, 1/4 say they have a lot of trust. That's quite a high percentage. Some is 15%, very little is 17%, none is 26%. So this is a mixed bag. Whereas here, and it's interesting, Yashwant Deshmukh, that no matter what you and I may think of the Waqfs in terms of how they operate and whether they act as the land mafia, amongst those whose land they take care of, or amongst the Muslim community that is most directly impacted, 59% say they have a lot of trust in the Waqf as an institution.
Absolutely, but the number comes wrong, from the 87 to the 60s. And then there is a very interesting question whether they are asking for transparency further in the Waqf or not. That is something which is very different, Rahul. I would really like you to show that if it is possible, because that shows that it's not about the content, it's more about the narrative. If done well, even probably a sizable section of Muslims would have probably agreed for a more transparent path.
So I want to take now what I think is the most consequential question of this survey that CVoter has done. And this is to do with, should there be more transparency in how Waqf properties are managed? Now, just forget for a moment what the non-Muslims think. Look at the percentage of Muslims who think that there is a need for greater transparency in how Waqf properties are managed. 46%, almost half the Muslim respondents in this poll say that there is a need for greater transparency in how Waqf properties are managed. Taslim Rahmani, that is a damning indictment of what people within the community think of the level of transparency with which the Waqf Board operates.
You see, Rahul, if you ask me this question that whether I trust on Waqf or not, my answer would be in negative. And as far as the transparency is concerned, even the 46 is a less number. If I go for this kind of a survey, they will tell me, 80% people will tell me that yes, we need more transparency. All this is very true, that we know that this is a corrupt institution, so many mismanagement is over there. We need that kind of amendment in the parliamentary law. It's all true. But when somebody has demanded in the parliament that the minister concerned shall come out with the statistics of the JPC approaches, how many people were in favor of this bill and how many are against this bill? But those statistics were not given. And how we are effecting that two things, legal part, I tried to read this bill for 3 times because I'm not a legal person and it's a very difficult legal language. Why the government is not intending in the tribal areas to give the liberty of tribal Muslims, which are scheduled tribes, to do away, to go with the Waqf properties and doing dedication and maintain. Manipur is a big Waqf property. Tripura, there are big Waqf properties. Assam, then the Lakshadweep. Then why you don't want in the tribal areas for the Muslims to maintain their awqaf or do more dedications in those areas?
Okay, let Rauf Rahim respond before I finish. The fact that half the respondents, almost half the respondents, think there is a need for greater transparency in how these Waqf boards operate, which suggests that even within the community, the percentage of people who are not comfortable with Waqf operations is very high. Mr. Rahim?
Yes, I think what Mr. Taslim Rahmani said is correct, that to trust the Waqf Board would be a fallacy. Definitely a part of it, and transparency is not something which is likened to the Waqf Board. Two things are definite, but it doesn't mean that the new act is correct. So if you identify corruption and you identify people who are corrupt, then Section 101 deemed all such persons to be public servants. Where has there been a single instance where a particular person from a Waqf board has been put in for criminal conspiracy. Not a single instance. And one more important thing is to be remembered is that the Waqf board functions under a ministry, and the ministry is the Ministry of Minority Affairs, A. And if you find A, that there is no trust, there's a trust deficit between members of the Waqf board, A, and there is no transparency, then the state government under section 99 has the power to supersede the board. So you can't just blame the board and not blame the state government.
I think you made some important points. The fact that you already have an act, to what extent has that been implemented? Current existing provisions for penalties and for reprimand, what's been done? Secondly, why ram it through? How much of it is political and how much of it is messaging? So we've had a very nuanced debate. This is a complex issue, and I think Yashwant's data really captures how Muslims and non-Muslims feel about it. So I want to thank him for doing this for us, and I want to thank all our guests for joining us.